Hi, I'm Justin Fuller, and I'm in Baltimore today to talk to Legg Mason Value Trust Manager, Bill Miller. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks. Hi, Justin.
Let's talk about what is on probably everybody's minds right now, which is, the streak that you had of beating the S&P for 15 years, 2 years ago, came to an end, and then what's happened over the last 2 years. My main question is, what occurred over the last 2 years that didn't match your expectations of what you thought would occur?
Let me go back to why there was a streak in the first place, because it explains why there isn't a streak now. In 1994, 1995, when we began doing work on technology, that was a case where those stocks were cheap, and we bought a fair chunk of them. We'd never owned them much before, but became convinced that they were great value. So when most other value managers, I think Mason Hawkins had 5 or 6 years in a row of underperforming, and the guys at Harris Associates same way, Wally White's the same way. That's because the market narrowed very dramatically in the late 90s, and it was all tech. And we had a lot of tech, so that's why we were able to do that, and other people weren't, because we did well when the value stuff was doing well in the early 90s, and then when the non-valuation stuff, which became momentum stuff in the late 90s, did well then. Had we made that same call in energy and materials in 2003 when we looked at them, and we did the same kind of analysis, hadn't owned the things in the past, they were very cheap by historic standards, but my view was at the time, and the mistake that I made at the time was, I didn't think that those businesses, I thought the business might be subject to a nice long cycle, but I didn't think that they were secularly attractive. And they still may or may not be secularly attractive. The jury's out. But had we loaded up on them the way that we did tech, then the streak would now be 17 years instead of stopping at 15 years, or at least it'd be really close. So that's been the main thing. The last 2 years, what's happened is that the market has gone from being where valuation strategies work to where momentum strategies work. So very similar to what happened in 98 and 99. And that momentum is existing almost exclusively in energy, materials, and global capital goods. And that's something that we don't have anything of. And what we've done in the past year or so, as the credit crisis unfolded, we were underweight financials moderately, but we've gone to significantly overweight financials as the credit crisis has gotten worse. Now, it got a lot worse than we thought it would, but I'm pretty happy with our positioning right now.
Given that you mentioned you're kind of in a momentum market with materials and energy stocks, how do you manage your contrarian strategy in face of that type of short-term adversity?
I had dinner with Eddie Lampert not long ago, and Eddie was, Sears is undergoing some level of adversity. It's one of our larger positions, but Eddie made the right point, which is that managing under those conditions is purely a question of being able to deal with client pressures. In retail mutual funds, it's redemptions. In the institutional world, where we have, I think the bulk of our assets, it's, incessant questions about why you did this wrong or why you did that wrong or when are you going to change or what's going to happen. And so that's the thing that makes it difficult. If you were doing, I think Monish Pabrai made a comment that, he just does this on his own and he doesn't talk to anybody, and it makes it a lot easier to do that. But, it's one of those things where, one of the things I tell the clients about this is, if you go back to 1999 and 2000, and you can take 2 great investors, George Soros and Julian Robertson. And Julian said, even though he was underperforming, losing assets, he said, I'm not going to change what I'm doing. This is what I know how to do. I'm long the best companies. I'm short the most expensive companies. And if they carry me out with that, that's what's going to happen. Well, that's what happened in March of 2000. He got his redemptions, had to shut down his fund. Now, he did fine. He's still worth a couple $1 billion and has done great. But that put him out of business. Soros, on the other hand, through Stan Druckenmiller, summer of 1999, it was the same thing. If we don't do this tech, we're going to be out of business. So they switched. And they were out of business a year later. So, because the tide turned. And I think that's my friend John Gunn, who runs Dodge & Cox, also tells a story about in 1999, they're sitting around the table saying, well, we've been in business 50 years. We might not make it to 51 or 52 because year after year of underperformance, assets flying out the door. And John had it right. He said, our competitive advantage is valuation. That's what we know how to do. If it's not working, we're just going to keep doing it. It's got to work at some point. And if we get smaller number of clients and smaller assets, that's what we do.